Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to call a meeting of the Board of Supervisors back to order. It is just 2 p.m., and we're now on item number 28, and then we're going to go through 3 collective bargaining agreements issues. I'm told that the district attorney may still be in court today, or, okay, all right. I'm also, I can say it now, I think you know that our DAS folks are also in court today. So if you don't see them here, that's what's going on. All right, so let's, we're going to open up, we're going to have a public hearing on, with respect to Northern Nevada Lodge number 8 on behalf of alternative sentencing. So let's go through that. The public hearing is now open on item 28 alpha, and then we'll see where we go. Okay? Who's going to do it?
So I don't know if you want, Mr. Mayor, I can lead off here. And again, as you said, all the DAS officers would have been here. However, they're in one of our specialty courts. They're in the drug court right now, and they couldn't make it. This has been a process. We've been talking with the bargaining unit, with the Fraternal Order of Police bargaining unit, for about 5 months now. It's been a very professional and a very cordial session, as it has been with all the bargaining units as we get into it. Dan Yu was the lead district attorney representative. I'm going to let Dan step through some of the details. Not much different from what we have briefed you in closed session pursuant to NRS 288. In your backup material here, we did include a red line version of the collective bargaining agreement so that everyone can see what has changed. I'll give Dan an opportunity to make a couple of brief comments. Nancy also has teed up a fiscal impact that we'll step through as well. She'll be able to brief what the total fiscal impact of this proposed bargaining agreement is. So unless there are any questions, we're going to turn it over to Dan. We'll go to Nancy, and then we'll go to the deputy chief if he has any final comments before the board takes it up.
Yeah, and the way this operates, this is the public hearing part of it. So if you have a concern with this, the time to raise it is during the public hearing. We'll go through all of the nuts and bolts of what's being proposed here, and then we'll close the public hearing for the next agenda item and see what the board wants to do. So that's kind of how these things work. We won't have public comment on the next one. Oh, we might. We'll probably should anyway. That's okay. But anyway, this is the major time for all these collective bargaining agreements. So let's go. Learned hand, Dan Yu.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and Supervisors. I just want to echo Nick's sentiments there. This has been a very cordial and a productive negotiations process with our DAS officers. So I do want to commend them on the record for their professionalism and their courtesy in having these discussions, both formally and informally, at the table, in my office, in the hallways, just to kind of get through, the nitty-gritty details of this next collective bargaining agreement. I do want to emphasize before I get into it at all that I had a meeting with Justin Reba, who's the chief negotiator on behalf of the Fraternal Order of Police, a couple of days ago. And I did want to remark on the record that he did convey to me that the entire membership is in approval of and has signed off on what you have before you today as supporting material. So both the red line version reflecting the changes from the last contract as well as the finalized version removing the red lines, the entire membership is in support of that. As I said, we believe that this is a good contract. It's mutually beneficial, and it's really the end result of a very productive negotiations process over the last several weeks or months. I won't get into the absolute particulars of every article. I don't want us to all have to be stuck here listening to me drone on for too long. But as Nick had mentioned, there is no substantial deviation. In fact, I would say there's no deviation from the last draft that I had presented to you in closed session, just to give you all a heads up. The changes that were made were all very technical in nature. I've basically reformatted it, made this a cleaner version. It's basically what you have, or what you will be signing off on today, hopefully, will be the quote-unquote pretty version, as I like to call it. Other than that, there are no substantive changes. We had made some technical changes just to make sure that there is clarity in the provisions for enforceability purposes. But other than that, the articles that we had discussed previously, those are all intact, and there have been no other deviations. So I'm here basically as the chief negotiator for the city on this contract and as counsel, and I'm happy to answer any specific questions you may have with respect to any of those changes that were made.
Nancy, we'll go, then Chief will get you clean up there, okay? Are you ready?
All right, so the only significant fiscal impact for this contract is changing the merit percentage increases. They were at 2, 3.5, and 5, and now they've changed to 3, 4.5, and 5.5 to mirror some of the other contracts that we have. So when we do the budget, we usually prepare it based on the middle range there. So in this slide, we're just comparing a 3.5% increase versus a 4.5% increase. So in the first year, the increase, the effect on the budget is $2,558. In 2019, it's $6,088. In 20, it's $7,198. And in 2021, it's $9,635. And that's for a total increase of $25,419. And that's just based on the impact above what we had already included in projections.
Got any more?
This one's simple.
Pretty easy, pretty easy. All
Short
right,
and sweet.
This is a public hearing. Anybody, and Chief, why don't you go? Give us
Mr. Mayor, just to let you know, our officers, they are extremely pleased with how the whole negotiation turned out for us. We think it's mutual beneficial for the community, for the client we serve, and for our officers. One of the big sticking point, or not sticking points, one of the things that was negotiated was the 10-hour shifts, more face time, get on the road with some of the areas that we service. So we think it's just going to be beneficial all around for everybody. It was relatively easy negotiations as they go. We're very happy with it.
Okay, appreciate hearing that. All right. Anybody else? Any other public comment? This is a public hearing. This is the time. Anybody? Going once. I'm going to close the hearing here in a minute. Anybody? All right, then we're going to close the hearing on the collective bargaining agreement with Northern Nevada Lodge number 8, alternative sentencing officers, and we're going to take up item number 28 Bravo. This is to consider the amended collective bargaining agreement between Carson City and the Fraternal Order of Police, Northern Nevada Lodge Number 8, to what we just had in public hearing. So, board members, questions, anything? I know we've all kind of been briefed on these things in closed session. Everybody okay with these things then?
Can I just make a general comment?
Comments are fine.
So I just want to make a general comment so that the public that hasn't been as familiar or following along the processes that we have done via closed sessions, that I really appreciate the work by the union, the district attorney's office, and the fellow board members here. And I think that it's really important that the public understand what their gain is in these contracts. So we did negotiate, and I want to reiterate out on the record that we are going to allow alternative sentencing officers' shift to change to the 10 hours. And I think that's a huge benefit for the public because it should eliminate potentially some overtime and allow you to complete the tasks that are required to get done to keep the public safe. So I think it's important we let the public know what the benefit of the contract is for them. So
Very good. Go.
And I just want to thank city staff for including us more than ever on the collective bargaining, even behind closed doors, so that we were privy to what your needs and concerns were, and that we could voice our thoughts along with city staff and negotiators so that they knew where we were coming from, so that we could get the best agreement possible that you hopefully would be content with. So.
Okay, well said, both of you. All right. All right. Somebody want to make a motion then?
I move to approve the amended collective bargaining agreement between Carson City and the Fraternal Order of Police, Northern Nevada Lodge Number 8, for a 4-year term beginning on July 1, 2017 and expiring on June 30, 2021, with the proposed changes as reflected in the amended agreement.
Second.
There's a motion and a second on the motion. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Thank you. All right. Let's take up the next CBA. This one is
The deputies, Mr. Mayor.
deputies. Hang on, I'll open the hearing here. Let me just kind of do it for the record here. We're now going to open a hearing, public hearing on the report of the city manager on the fiscal impact and recommended approval of the modified collective bargaining agreement between Carson City and the Carson City Deputy Sheriff's Association on behalf of the Carson City Sheriff's deputies, effective July 1, 2017 to June 30th, 2021, with an estimated fiscal impact of $1,346,613. This is the public time for the public hearing. Want to go through and
So
tell
let me-
everybody
let me
what the
take
nuts
you
and
through
bolts
a
are,
brief-
what happened, what the major changes are, and then we'll see if anybody has any questions.
Sure, in a similar way, I'll do the initial comments. I'll turn it over to the CFO. She'll talk about the fiscal impact. You have the association president here who's going to make a few remarks. I would like to note for the record that Sheriff Kenny Furlong had a appointment that could not be moved and is not able to attend, but that he not only concurs with the draft collective bargaining agreement in front of you, but he also appreciates both the management and the labor side during the negotiation process. And he also wanted me to pass on that he appreciated this board's support of his department during the entire negotiation process. So I want to point that out for the record, Mr. Mayor. So I've been here 3 years. I've gone through every bargaining unit now. In the case of the deputies, this is actually the second time we have negotiated a collective bargaining agreement. This, by far, has been the most difficult task that we've had in terms of labor negotiation. The deputies were in a broadband system, and if you remember 2 years ago, we could not square that circle, so to speak, and come up with a way to get the deputies out of that broadband system. And there were some real problems. There were real problems for mainly the mid-range deputies. Based on how that broadband system functioned, you had deputies with 7, 8, 9 years experience being paid exactly the same wage as a new hire. So last time we tried to do it 2 years ago, we weren't able to. a lot of the reason we weren't able to, I think both labor and management had kind of dug in their heels, and we got to the point where we just couldn't get anything done. This time, it was a totally different environment, very professional, very cordial. I want to thank the association for being extremely flexible. We worked hard to solve what we saw as a real problem, and they worked hard. There was give and take. So there was, if you look at Article 6, they were in that broadband system. What we are now proposing to you is a 10-step system. That is the major change in the collective bargaining agreement. There are a number of other articles that change, but especially as we look at the fiscal impact, the main fiscal impact by far is moving the deputies from that broadband to a 10-step system. Each one of those steps, as they go up on an annual basis, will entail somewhere between a 3.4 to a 4% increase in pay on an annual basis. So each one of the steps, the deputies will go up on an annual basis, provided they get a meets expectation or above evaluation. They'll go up to the next step, and they'll get that pay raise. So I'd like to kick it over to CFO. She can talk about the fiscal impact. This is a big contract. This is a big bargaining unit. I think it's fitting that we have all of our public service bargaining units, or all of our public safety bargaining units here today, because in many ways, these are the public face of Carson City. And especially in the case of the deputies, they represent the city in very important, life and death type situations. So it was a lot to get us here. I want to thank you, Brett. I want to thank the whole team. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Don't finish.
No, I'm done. Yeah.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just wanted to echo what Nick said. Going into these negotiations, I know last time we had an impasse, so going into it, there was that expectation that we might have some issues. We had the banding issue, which last time it was hard to find some solution for it. But I have to say that it was a lot of work. It was hard. I'm not going to say it was easy, but the teams that we had made it very nice to work with these individuals. It was very professional. There was a lot of cooperation, and I just want to thank everybody on both teams for doing that. I think it made it really pleasant.
All right, so I apologize, you have to have like bionic eyes to read that. It's because the increases were so small, and then the titles also got cut off. They look just fine on my Mac, but I guess converting. So the blue is the original budget projections, and the red is the fiscal impact of the proposed changes to the contract provisions.
Could you read those, Nancy? Just
you
read
want
the
the
numbers
large-
going from left to
Yeah.
right.
So in fiscal 18, it's $7,628,000, and that represents only the amount, the cost of the provisions that we're revising. So it's not the entire contract with all annual leave and all that. It just relates to the certain provisions that we're adjusting. And then fiscal 19 is 7.8 million. 2020 is almost 8 million, and 2021 is 8.2 million. So then the cost of the proposed revisions is 165,000 in the first year, 259,000 in 2019, 417,000 in 2020, and 505,000 in 2021. And then this one you can probably see a little bit better. So this is what makes up those costs. Putting them into the 10-step system is the first line, and then also we changed the education incentive from some of the employees were just receiving 2% for AA and 4.5%, I think, and then we adjusted those up to match so that all the employees had the same benefit. And then longevity, and then shift differential and overtime, So those are all well, except for shift differential, those are all a consequence of changing, the pay rates. And then they all include PERS also. And then we changed the uniform allowance, and those are all the different things that make up the increase for a total of $1,346,000.
Over 4 years. Okay. Yes, sir. Want to ink in, weigh in?
For those of you that don't know me, my name is Brett Binley. I'm the Chief Negotiator for the Deputy Sheriff's Association, and I'm also a deputy here in Carson City. I understand you guys are all very busy today, so I just want to take a few moments to just make some comments about this process that brings us to this agreement that our membership has ratified, and we think it's mutually beneficial for the community. Coming into negotiations from our side, we had a few goals we wanted to reach throughout the process, but the primary one was we wanted to amend a collective bargaining agreement, which what we think and mutually agreed upon fairly pays the deputy sheriffs in Carson City, as well as able to attract new deputy sheriffs to Carson City. And we do want to attract the best deputies possible to work here. In order to achieve that, we have to remain competitive amongst our employment here. So that includes working environment, community support, salary, and benefits. In addition to attracting new people, we also want to retain the deputies that are already here. I'm very proud to represent this group behind me today. And make no mistake, these deputies that you guys see in this room, they are the highest caliber in the state of Nevada. Every statement that I just made is supported by data from measurable metrics, from crime-solving rates to calls for service handled to inmates served in the jail, to community contacts. Every measurable metric represents that these guys and girls sitting behind me are the best in the state of Nevada. We are more educated. We have more advanced certifications than our peers. We handle more calls for service and more inmates than our peers in the area. And this city's seen its share of difficult times, especially when we hit budget crunch, layoffs, 2008, we sent some people home. Our guys have been very resilient. Our tenure here is very good. We've had deputies weather the storm. Carson City, you're seeing a drop in crime, while other areas surrounding us and other areas in the state of Nevada are seeing increases. So something we're doing right with these people behind me is having a positive effect in Carson City. None of this would be possible without our community support. Our community at large has always been very supportive of the Sheriff's Office mission and goals. This was magnified and felt, especially by us after Deputy Howell was killed in August 2015. Our streets turned blue, and thanks to Mr. Morano's recent campaign, our streets turned blue to recognize his sacrifice and support our ongoing mission day to day. The public support continues to and always has been for us beyond words, whether it's showing up at public events like National Night Out or Cops and Kids, or the public assisting us in solving major crimes that we see in the the newspaper or on the news. The public's support behind us to provide tips and be observant and help out is just over the top. This community constantly bands together to support us. The agreement that is before you today is a collaboration between us and the city's negotiation team to come up with what we think to be a fair compensation package, while ensuring that we continue to have the means to attract and retain the very best law enforcement officers in the state. I'd like to give thanks particularly to Nick and Adriana and Ms. Paulson and Melanie, if she's here somewhere. Melanie's back there. We worked with this team. I won't digress too much into the history between the city's negotiation team and ours, but it hasn't always been pleasant. This time, I can say the exact opposite. These people were diligent, professional. They responded to all of our concerns very promptly, and this city has an air of excellence about it, which these people represent, and we appreciate all their hard work for this. Sheriff Furlong's not here today, but we'd like to thank his management team also. They were very good about providing insight and information, and I'd also like to thank you guys in the city for fostering an atmosphere where we can have this caliber of people working and staying here. So,
An air of excellence. I like that in our community. That's a pretty good phrase. An air of excellence. Yeah. You're going to see me use that.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Okay.
Feel free. I haven't trademarked it yet.
All right. This is a public hearing, so anybody else want to weigh in? Public hearing? We're going to close it here in a minute, then we'll take a board here. Anybody? I don't see anybody. Okay, so we're going to close the public hearing, and we'll take up the parallel item before the board. This is item 28, Delta. So, board, we're here. Questions of the staff? I know, as we've gone through with the alternative sentencing folks, you know, we've spent a lot of time dealing with these issues. So, go ahead, Supervisor Abel.
I just again want to thank staff and Sheriff Furlong, who were very, very clear with us about what your needs were, what needed to happen, and how best we could get there. And I want to thank Nancy Paulson, who said, all right, well, this might not work, but this will work. And, you know, and was so great with the numbers in terms of trying to get us to a place where we could feel comfortable. So, again, thank you.
I just want to say that collective bargaining is not an easy task for either side. You know, I need to put that on the record for the public to understand, because while we've worked hard and you've worked hard, it may be difficult for the general public to understand how we just got here and, oh my gosh, that's $1 million. So what I want to say so that the public understands is that it's imperative that we have good working relationships with our employees, but that it is something fair and appropriate for the public. And so for me, I'm going to support this agreement because the issue in it, it was not fair that a first-year deputy got paid the same as a 10-year employee. So we had to make the correction to get it equalized and done appropriately for retention and for attraction to new employees. And so I just wanted to put that on the record so that the general public can understand that it's not that we as a board just give away $1 million, because it isn't the case. We are very, very prudent with the dollars, and I loved the air of excellence, because I think that's what this board represents, and I'm pleased to say so to you. So thank you.
Well
Thank
said.
you.
Well said. Okay, anybody else? Anybody else want to weigh in? Okay, somebody want to make a motion? We'll see where it goes. Motion, Supervisor Abel.
I move to approve the amended collective bargaining agreement between Carson City and the Carson City Deputy Sheriff's Association on behalf of the Carson City Sheriff's deputies for a 4-year term beginning July 1, 2017 to June 30th of 2021, with the proposed language as reflected in the amended agreement and with an estimated fiscal impact of $1,346,613.
There's a motion by Supervisor Abel, second by Supervisor Bagwell, on a motion discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, signal by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried, unanimous. On behalf of all of us here at the board, we want to say thank you, because, you know, it's not only just an air of excellence. We don't have a lot of the problems that other jurisdictions have, because you folks in this room do your job in a very professional way with compassion, but yet with sufficient oomph to make sure that, you know, we're all protected in this community. And we're blessed to have you here. So when we see the uniforms out there, you see the blue lights, know that we're standing shoulder to shoulder with you.
We appreciate that very much. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Okay. We'll now take up the final collective bargaining for the firefighters. This is on item 28 Echo. This is for the third amended public hearing regarding the third amended collective bargaining agreement between Carson City and the Carson City Firefighters Association Local 2251, which would be effective June 30th, 2023, with a fiscal impact of $904,348. Okay, who's going to take us through this first? All right.
Well, before we get into it substantively, I do have some non-substantive changes that are just, I'm asking to be made by interlineation. If you would refer to page 4 of the red line version. It's Article 4. So It's Article 4, but it's on page 4 of the red line version. It is. So between line 6 and 8, there was a change that was inserted that we are just actually not going to be inserting because it must have been a typo of some sort. So it will actually be not changed in the agreement. And it will read subject to, yes, the right to reduce, enforce, or lay off any association member because of lack of work or lack of funds, subject to procedures for reduction in workforce set forth in Article 31. The next minor change is on page 12 of the red line version. Section D, transport. You guys with me? Okay, so just in the title, we need to add on section D, transport with FS members. It's very minor.
I don't see where you are on that.
Right there. She wants to just change the title.
It's section D of page 12 in the red line version. Yeah, just to make it more accurate. Then jumping to page 20, I only have 2 more of these. They're technical, but they would be substantive if they weren't agreed to. So it could change the way the contract reads substantively, but they're non-substantive changes, if that makes sense. So I only have 2 more. So page 20, Article 13, right above payroll deductions. Just remove the or FP members, so it reads fire inspectors or BLS patient care technicians and fire inspectors may not trade shifts with FS members.
Can you explain that?
Yes, I can. So basically, it's only meant to be fire suppression members. Fire prevention members aren't included as part of that. Does that make sense?
No, I understood that, but what's the reasoning behind it? Why wouldn't it be both?
I'm not sure why you don't want to both.
For the record, John Arneson. So fire prevention are 8 to 5. They don't do the same job as fire suppression, so they can't trade with a 24-hour, 48-hour employee. And the BLS people obviously can't trade with any of those because they're not the same skill set. Does that make sense? So the only people that can trade with each other are fire suppression personnel.
For safety staffing purposes.
Correct.
So can I just ask a certification question then technically? Are you saying your fire prevention individual is not certified and can't do fire suppression?
They are not engaged in fire suppression. They're fire prevention and fire investigation.
That's not what my question was. My question was, do they hold a certification and have the ability to do the role of a fire suppression?
They do hold some certifications depending on the inspector. I can't really answer exactly what they have, each individual. There's only 2.
Okay.
But in a normal day, they do not do fire suppression. I mean, they don't ever do fire suppression. They have turnouts. They go to fire calls. They don't squirt water. They don't move hose. They investigate, and they do prevention.
But in an emergency, you're saying they wouldn't help fight the fire?
No, they would not.
Okay. Oh.
They would have more of a support role at any major incident. So they're qualified in support role situations, but they're not qualified to operate on a fire engine.
Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you. So the last change is page 21, Article 15. And we're just inserting the word, are you guys with me? We're just inserting the word appropriate in front of association member salary, because some will be associated with the fire department and some will be
What
associated.
line are you on there,
I'm sorry.
Iris?
Line, between line 12 and 13 for context. But I actually inserted appropriate on line 13, line 15, line 17, line 21, 22, and 24 of that paragraph. Okay. And that is it for that portion.
Can we go back to the last one again, in section 13.2?
Yes.
So I just want to be clear, you're saying that the FP members, they wouldn't be allowed to trade regardless, so we don't need to put them in here?
Correct.
Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay.
So now that we're done with that, I definitely want to thank you all for considering this matter. This program that's being introduced by the fire department is a basic life support service. It's critical because right now, the advanced life support services are handling all of the calls. And what that means is when they're called to a call that is basic life support, they have to stay there until the call is finished. So in the meanwhile, if they get another call that's a heart attack or a stroke, they may not be available and they have to rely on mutual aid, which takes longer. And that's not a good thing. So this basic life support service will be put in place if you all approve it, and it will make the fire department more effective. It will make the community more safe. It's just good all around.
Are you done? So, Mr. Mayor, before we go over to the CFO to talk about fiscal impact, I'll also give the chief an opportunity, and then the president of Local 2251, if he wants to make any comments as well, that would be appropriate. So this has been a long time coming. And I think it's appropriate that you have the firefighters, the deputies, and DAS here. Together, they represent almost 50%, about 48% of your general fund expenditures. So public safety, in anyone's mind, I think, is the first function of government. And I think we're blessed with the firefighters, the deputies, and our alternative sentencing officers here. This particular negotiation with 2251 has taken a long time. There were points where we were no longer talking to each other, we were yelling at each other. And it had a major impact on the morale in your fire department. I'm very pleased to tell you that, especially with Chief Slayman coming on board, we have righted that ship. The fire department is, if you look regionally, the busiest department in Northern Nevada by calls for service. This particular unit that we're proposing as part of this amended collective bargaining agreement will go a long way, as Iris said, to bleeding off a lot of the lower level calls that right now you've got paramedics with advanced life support ambulances responding to. So for the general public, what that means is we're responding in a much less cost-effective way for almost a third of our medical calls for service. So we're very fortunate that we received a multi-year grant to do fire suppression, and we're able to reprogram some of the money that we had been using for fire prevention. We're able to reprogram into this basic life support capability. This will be resident within our ambulance enterprise fund, and we fully expect that the revenue, and what that means again to the general public, is the ambulance fund bills. It bills private insurance, it bills Medicare. Soon we're going to bill Medicaid for our calls for service. So this basic life support ambulance will be able to bill and will be able to generate revenue. And it is our expectation that once we have it up and running, we will increase the number of EMTs, they're not paramedics, but the number of EMTs we have who will be available to respond to those type of calls. There are other changes to the collective bargaining unit, or to the collective bargaining agreement. Many of them were cleanup type language changes. There are a number of substantive changes. Chief among them, we're proposing to extend this contract as well for 3 additional years. We think that it's a good deal for the city, and it's a good deal for your firefighters as well. So it's been a long time getting here. I'm very happy that we're at this point, that we're not only able to stand up a much-needed basic life support capability, but we're also able to take care of the firefighters and extend this collective bargaining agreement through 2023. So we think it's a good deal for the city. Nancy, if you could go over the fiscal impact to this, I think that would be important, and then we'll open it up to the chief, and if the president of 2251 wants to make any comments, that would be appropriate as well.
All right, so the total fiscal impact is estimated at $895,000 for the addition of the BLS members to this contract. So up on the screen, on the top part is the cost per employee for a BLS employee. And you can see the salary starts out at almost $40,000 in fiscal 18, and then there's 4.5% increases each year, which is the mid-range of the possible increases, up to almost $50,000 in fiscal 2023. And then adding the benefits onto that, the totals range from $63,755 in 18 up to $82,829 in fiscal year 23. So they're going to start the program out with 2 BLS employees, and that's down below the total cost, the salaries and benefits for the 2 employees each year, ranging from $127,511 in fiscal 18 up to $165,659 in 2023. We also added in a small amount for overtime, and then for uniform allowance. They're not getting uniform allowance through this contract, but the contract states that we'll provide their uniform. So the total costs associated with this program, related to this contract, there'll be other services and supplies and a vehicle, but I didn't put that in here because it didn't relate to the contract. So the total salaries and benefits is $130,911 in fiscal 18, up to $169,000 in fiscal 2023. So the other fiscal impact was related to the fire prevention uniforms. They used to receive $700 per year, and that's going up to $1,200 per year to match, I believe, the firefighters. And that's all I had for the fiscal impact.
Yeah, why don't we could take questions here and we'll go from there. Go. John, Supervisor Baird.
Even though it's not in there, what is the cost of the ambulance and the other matters that you mentioned, even though it's not part of the collective bargaining?
I believe it's approximately $70,000.
Well, so I have built into my budget $109,000. John said it may come down a little bit from there. Services and supplies are $54,500 each year. So these will initially be, these costs will be covered by savings in the wildland fire account until this program can become self-sustaining with the revenues.
Okay. And how long would that take? Do you think a year or 2?
Well, the data that we have is last year for 16, we had 3,322 BLS transports. and we had mutual aid calls at 270. So I can't exactly tell you that every one of those mutual aid calls billed out as that, which is about $1,000 per transport, but I can't tell you what the outside agencies are getting. But if you understand that that money's coming back into the city as opposed to going outside, it would only take about 1.9 calls a day for the BLS ambulance to break even. And there were 4.4 calls per day last year. Excuse me, not last year, the 200 days that the unit was in service.
And that's one of the items that I wanted to point out. Nick mentioned it earlier, and then Lori's made a point of trying to put on the record the benefit to the public. And so we can look at this fiscal impact of $870,000 and change, but what you don't see there is the revenue offset. And so the net fiscal impact is not going to be anywhere near that on the BLS side.
That's correct.
Just one
And
more.
also, that's over 6 years as opposed to the other contracts, so.
And one more point to make, the ambulance that we're buying is only around $71,000. It is just like a Ford Transit. So you're talking $71,000 for an ambulance, you're talking about another $21,000 for a gurney setup, which seems like a lot of money until you hurt someone's back. And then, but in comparison, one of the ambulances that our firefighter paramedics run is almost $200,000. So, you know, once again, we don't have to buy that big ambulance for these EMTs. They don't have the gear that the firefighter paramedics have, and they don't need any big rig like that. Plus, we're trying to save money. That's the whole point of this program. Save money and make money.
Well, again, just because Brad's right, I just need to have the public understand, it puts another ambulance service into our community for the safety. And so, as we all know, time is of the essence, right? So the fastest someone can get there to help you, the more opportunity for a successful outcome on your medical encounter. So I think the beauty of this is the public is actually going to get some more service. So it's not just a pay issue on this one. The public's actually going to gain an additional ambulance service, and I really believe as we get going, this one will actually pay for itself. So I also don't believe there'll be a general fund impact after a couple of years of getting it up and running. So I think it's a win for everyone on this one.
And the plus for the public is they'll be getting the correct service that we know they'll be getting. So that's the big impact.
I want to put one other thing on the record too, because I know there was some issues on which contract the BLS belonged in, and so I've been assured by the DA's staff that this is the correct bargaining unit to put it in, because the elements of this agreement for the BLS mirrors the vast majority of the elements in a different contract that we have. So I just wanted it to be, again, on the record that we've determined this is the correct bargaining unit for the BLS technicians.
Would you like me to go into the community of interests at all?
Okay. I just think it should be on the
Yes.
record so that it's properly recognized.
We
She said it
definitely,
just right. Don't worry about it.
we definitely feel that way.
All right. All right. Other questions or comments from the board? John?
Yeah, I just want to say that I want to get in on the kumbaya moment for all of these agreements. Everybody's talking about how wonderful it is, and of course, I come out of a tradition of everything happening in the public that we can get to happen in the public. Sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes collective bargaining is one of the areas where it doesn't work too well. So consequently, as a new board member, I'm going to take credit for all of this, because this wouldn't have happened if I hadn't been here.
That was good.
But seriously, I was not looking upon this particular part of today previously as something that I thought was a good deal, either for the public or for this board. And the reason was, when it was first presented in one of those private moments rather than the public moment, it was presented as by the way, we're going to have a 3-year extension of the contract. And my personal views of that aside, it probably is a good deal as I studied it over time. So I think we have reached the agreements that probably are needed for this community. But I will probably in the future argue for a little more public exposure of some of these things. That can have negative consequences because then people have to posture for public consumption, or think they do sometimes. But one of the concerns I have about all of this is that our taxpayers really do need to know how this works. I don't think anybody on this board probably would agree with me, but well, they might agree with me, but when it comes down to the nitty-gritty, there's a difference between philosophy and practicality. And so far, this has been a practical process. But going forward, I'd like to have it be more public if possible.
Chief Slayman.
Thank you, Mayor. Member.
You're going to answer Supervisor Barrett's question.
He stole my thunder. I was going to take credit.
Okay.
Year-long or
All right.
multi-faceted. But Sean Slayman, your fire chief. This is a pretty special contract for the services that we're going to be able to provide. And I think when you look at any business model, whether it's a private business or a public business, the ability to evolve to a changing climate is what makes a business successful. And this is what is presented before you today. This is not the solve the same solution with the same answer that we've had in the past. This is a creative way, and it's kudos to the labor group, it's kudos to the city and to the previous fire management, as I'm coming in way late in on this and had very little to do with this. But this is a very cost-efficient but an improved level of service at the same time. And with any negotiation, I think everyone's walking away that they're going to get a couple good things, and they didn't quite get everything that they wanted. And I think that's a sign of a successful negotiation. The creative side of just EMTs, it's going to relieve stress on our already stressed system. We've been 15 years without increased services, yet our call volumes increased about 100% during that time. And as you see in the weekly reports, our reliance on mutual aid is becoming more and more, and our partners are more than happy to help, as we are more than happy to help them, but there comes that tipping point where it's no longer serviceable. This is going to improve that. It's going to give a little less wear and tear on our firefighters. It's going to keep our response times where they're at, if not maybe even slightly improve them, because we'll have another resource on the road from a 40-hour perspective. And we're doing it in a more cost-efficient way. And it also gives us, really it becomes a hiring pool for us. It allows us to bring people into the organization, again, at a lower cost. We get to feel them out, and they get to feel our organization out. And if they are committed, they are good people and do good things, they're the people that we're going to hire in our future, and it's going to create a longer-term success story for us and less likely to have a turnover situation. I'd like to just thank especially the city manager's office, the DA's office, the HR department, our labor group 2251, and Chief Arneson. They are all of the key players in this proposal that is coming, this contract that comes before you. And it was a lot of work, as with any negotiations goes, and I'd be remiss without thanking any of them, and especially Chief Arneson. He is the one that has seen this through and kept his hair at the same time. So thank you to everyone involved.
It's getting a little grayer, though, Chief.
Just mentioned that. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. All right, this is a public hearing, the public hearing part of this. Anybody else want to weigh in? Anybody? Yeah, bargaining unit, sorry.
Thank you.
Here, you bet.
For the record, Brian Hunt, President, Local 2251. Thank you very much for letting us be here today. As the gentleman in the back of the room will tell you, I'm very well known for not being brief, but I'm going to do my best to do that. But I really want to reiterate some of the things that were said by our brothers and sisters over the Sheriff's Department. We work in a great city. You guys have the best Sheriff's Department in this state, if not the country, and I think you have the best fire department. I think it goes without saying that you get a great bang for your buck. That's been mentioned by this board in the past. And this whole process has been a long time coming. This fire department has not seen an increase in staffing. Actually, it's seen a decrease in staffing in my time here in my 19 years. So we have continued to do more with less. And I think when this process started, as the city manager said, there was some struggles and some arguments. But I think once the right puzzle pieces were put in place, this process actually became a really smooth, great process. Chief Arneson has done unbelievable amounts of research and time spent in trying to make not only this work, but the contract extension, the city manager, HR, DA's office. It's been a lot of teamwork. I think it brought us back together again, which we were lacking. As you guys well know, we were coming off a time of some different beliefs and some morale issues within the department, and I think those are rapidly improving, and I think this contract will hopefully provide not just some relief, a lot of the things Chief said, without repeating all that. This BLS unit will be a great addition to the fire department. It's a creative way of doing things. It was there was some arguments at first. We're used to one level of service. Now this is a new modern fire service that we're all going to have to work together and get used to, which is a great thing. But with this process, I really hope everyone understands how much this is starting to bring us back together. The addition of Chief Slayman has been one of the best things that's happened in this department in a long time. And I think with the city leadership that has been provided to us, we've really come back together. Having a 6-year contract provides relief to you guys from having to, and I'm saying this in a positive way, but dealing with us for the next 6 years.
We're aware of that.
It provides some breathing room.
That's part of the benefit of this contract, at least from this chair.
It provides the city manager, and his department and the DA's office to focus on a lot of other needs in the city. And that's an important thing. It provides our fire chief with the time and effort that he can put into growing this fire department, growing the services to the city, maximizing the fire department's use. And it also provides us, gets us where we need to be. I think this will help with some recruitment and retention. We've had those issues on both sides. So I think this will help, having new guys see that they have a good, clear, concise contract that has good pay, good benefits at a very busy department that's hard to recruit to sometimes. I think this will help dramatically. I think people will look at that and know that there's some future here and that the city is standing behind its employees and its firefighters to help try to do the right thing for them, just as we owe it to the city and to you to do right by you guys. So without getting into any other details, if there's any other questions, but I really do thank you. I thank you for this opportunity. I really do think this is a great thing. The body is very much behind this of Local 2251. We're excited. We're excited about the new leadership and the leadership within the city and providing us the ability to do the job that we love to do. Thank you.
Well spoken, Brian. Well, okay. Public hearing. Anybody else want to weigh in? I'm going to close the hearing here in a minute, then we're going to take it here. All right, I don't see any more. So we'll close the public hearing. We'll bring this to the board on the next agenda item today, and that is to consider the collective bargaining agreement with the firefighters. Any further questions we have of anybody? Okay. Motion's in order. Go ahead.
I move to approve the third amended collective bargaining agreement between Carson City and the Carson City Firefighters Association, local number 2251, IAFF, effective July 1, 2010 to June 30th, 2023, with a fiscal impact of $904,348.
There's a second by Supervisor Bagwell. Discussion? Let me just say on discussion, the comments that we had here with respect to our deputies go equally to our firefighters. We have wonderful public safety folks in this community. We have great response times, and people know that in this community that if they have a problem on either side of the fence here with respect to either fire or police, that they're going to get a good response, and that maybe their life is going to get saved. And so I think we speak for all of us up here that, we're proud to have such quality people in our community. You make a community a better place to live. And that's what, when you get right down to it, that's what we want as citizens. We want to have a good place to live in a cost-effective manner and done in a professional manner, and that's what all of you folks in this room here are doing. So, and I tend to agree with what Supervisor Barrett said during during comment earlier. Sometimes we all want these things to be more open if they can, and that's not a bad thing. But putting that aside for a minute, I think all of us up here realize that independent of the process, we have first-class people here in this community who are doing the public safety and carrying a pretty large oar. So just know that, all right. On the motion, further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Okay, folks. How about that, with three bargaining units? All right. All right, we're going to be in recess for 10 minutes while we move. All right. All right, we're going to bring the meeting of the Board of Supervisors back to order. We're now on item number 29 Alpha A. This is Bill number 114 on second reading, an ordinance authorizing the issuance of medium-term bonds in a maximum principal amount of $3.84 million. We've had first reading on this. Anything changed since first reading?
No, I just wanted to mention that we received several bids on the financing, and the one that we're going with, we received a quote for an interest rate of 2.13%.
Is that a good, I mean, I understand, that's very good. I understand that the Fed just cranked up the borrowing rate by 0.25%. Is that going to affect that or not?
No, we're locked in right now
Wow,
at this
good-
point.
Good
yeah.
move, man.
So, and it's actually savings of interest of $230,000 from the original amortization schedule we had with the prior.
So the
board
total
item.
savings are what then? 230 plus?
230,000 from our original quote. It was originally quoted at 3.25% interest.
No more cars from the sheriffs.
All right, John, Supervisor Barrett, I'm sorry,
So
John.
just to beat some of Brad's 200-mile-per-hour horses, that's a very good interest rate, right? Okay,
Yes.
and we couldn't expect that maybe 3 years from now, could we?
Well, looking at the crystal ball, I say.
Never mind.
No,
Seems very unlikely.
yeah.
Yeah, locked in too, that's good. All right. Public comment, anybody on this one? All right, on second reading, motion's in order.
What's the ordinance number?
2017-14.
I move to adopt Bill number 114 on second reading. Ordinance number 20. Sorry. Okay. Ordinance number 2017-14. An ordinance authorizing the issuance of a medium-term obligation in the maximum principal amount of $3,840,000 to finance the cost of acquiring, improving, and equipping vehicles, facilities, information technology, and the communications console system, specifying the details for the Carson City, Nevada General Obligation Limited Tax Medium-Term Bond, Series 2017A, and specifying the terms and conditions of such bond, the method of paying the bond, and its form.
Motion in a couple seconds on the motion, discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried, unanimous. Thank you. Okay, let's take up 29 Bravo. This is discuss and possibly approve the First Amendment to the interlocal contract for self-insurance and risk management between Carson City and Douglas County. Ms. Paulson, you going to take us through this, or who's going to do it?
All right, and I
Celia.
have Cecilia Meyer here too, and she's our risk management coordinator. So the initial interlocal contract was entered into in January of 2017 for an amount not to exceed $10,000. And at that point, because it was below the threshold, we didn't need to present that to the board. Douglas County has gone through the process of becoming self-insured, and they would like to expand the services that we're providing and to extend the term of the contract. Yeah, they just requested additional assistance during their transition period. And our current risk management coordinator has extensive knowledge of the process as she managed the cities when we went to become self-insured. So her job functions will remain a priority. Her job functions for Carson City, and the services to Douglas County will be scheduled to minimize any effect on the city. The Douglas County Board approved this on May 4th, 2017. And we potentially can receive revenue up to $60,000 in the workers' comp fund to offset some of Cecilia's wages. And so I just wanted to mention that, so her workload varies depending on the number of open claims and the different times of the year. Currently, any downtime that she has is spent researching current industry standards or updating her policies. Spring is a busy time. That's when we do insurance renewals. So her time with Douglas will be, rearranged so that there's no effect on the city. Also, a lot of her functions can be done remotely. A lot of it's through email, which she can also do while she's down physically at Douglas County. And that's all I had on that.
Cecilia, you want to add anything? Want to tell us a little bit about, why don't you just take a minute and, tell us what you do and how it works and stuff like that, so.
Cecilia Meyer, Risk Management Coordinator for Carson City. I oversee the self-insured workers' compensation program for Carson City, which means that all claims come through me, and I work very closely with our third-party administrator, who is CCMSI, and we work closely together to be sure that our injured workers are treated medically as quickly as possible, with as minimal amount of lost time. They get back to work as soon as possible and move towards claim closure so they can move on. I also oversee the liability program for Carson City, which, as Nancy mentioned, in the summer or in the spring, we do all of the renewals, and all liability claims come through me as well. And then I work with our carriers on getting those claims set up and closed, or processed and closed as well. I also act as the safety director for Carson City, and I work with our safety committee. I also handle all of our drug testing, with the exception of pre-hire, but I handle all of the DOT and non-DOT drug testing for randoms, reasonable suspicion, such as that. And
In your spare time?
in my spare time.
You help out with Douglas County?
Yes, I'll help Douglas County out. They're coming along very well. They're very excited to have this program in place because they know that it is a big money saver for them. And so we'll get that up and running. They'll be effective on July 1st. But in the initial stages, you know, it's not like 100 claims are going to come in the first week. So it'll get off the ground slowly. And I'll assist them a little bit with their liability, but they have chosen to remain with the pool for their liability coverage. So I'll just help them a little bit with the claims that fall under their deductible.
Okay, thanks. See, I think it's important for people to hear all
Thank you.
those things go on there. All right.
Thanks.
Public comment? Anybody? Board?
I think that cooperation with our surrounding jurisdictions is a good thing. I don't have any issue with that at all. I have some issues with this amendment. It disturbs me that we feel like we can commit 2 days a week of your time to be down in Douglas County, regardless of whether you can remotely do a lot of your work from down there or not. I think that there's a solution here. What I would like to see is Carson's ability through this agreement to recoup some more of the indirect costs. So right now we have a 10% fee in here for indirect costs. I don't think that's adequate. I think that we should also have a provision that if we need to add additional staff because you're down in Douglas County, that cost is also reimbursed to us. So to me, I don't have an issue with what we're trying to do. I don't have an issue with you being the one to do it, but I don't think that we have given ourselves a good enough deal here to cover our indirect costs, and we're going to end up eating a lot of expenses here. So what I'd like to see, in order for me to support this, is adding some additional language in here that if we incur additional expenses, such as staff, because you're down in Douglas County, that's reimbursed to us.
Okay.
I think we're all good with that. All right. Other board comments? You want to make a motion to that effect? We'll fix up the contract.
I move to approve the First Amendment to the interlocal contract for self-insurance and risk management consulting services between Carson City, Nevada and Douglas County, Nevada, for Carson City to provide consulting services at Douglas County's expense, those expenses to include any other possible expense items that may come up, including additional staffing or other items.
So motion is second. Are we okay on, I understand what it's saying. Do we need to be more?
Shouldn't we get the
Yeah.
technically, I don't want to do that. I'd like the contract to come back to us with good language in it.
I'm fine with that. I'd actually rather do that.
Yeah, let's
What's the
get an
time-
amended new
what's the
contract.
timing on this?
What's the time frame we got working here?
I think it was going to be July 1st, but we can still work under we haven't really, the old up to 10,000 contract. Yeah,
In that
it's only
case,
been
I'd-
like $1,000.
I'd
so
withdraw
far.
my motion and just actually make it a staff directive or staff instruction to bring back the agreement with the ability for us to recapture all of our incurred expenses.
Okay.
Okay, all right. Let's take up item number 29, Charlie. Excess workers' compensation liability service, $106,174. Ms. Paulson, you doing this? Who's, Cecilia's back.
All right, Cecilia's back, and we also have Brandon Lewis, who's our broker with Wells Fargo. So this is to enter into an agreement for excess workers' comp liability insurance services with New York Marine and General Insurance Company for a total of $106,000. This is the same company that we have currently, and this was an increase of 4.7% from last year.
Increase with what again, please?
4.7%.
Okay, Supervisor Abel.
I guess my only question is, do they provide the best insurance package at the best price?
I'll let Brandon answer that.
Be happy to. For the record, Brandon Lewis, Wells Fargo Insurance, Mr. Mayor, Supervisors. Yes, this year they provided the best, most competitive quote. They've been the carrier for a few years, and there are only 3 or 4 other insurers that will offer excess work comp for public entities with police and fire exposures. And several of them have minimum premiums that are at least $150,000 or $200,000. We did market the coverage this year and got a formal quote from one other carrier and a declination from a third, from ones that could offer premiums in your range. So New York Marine was definitely the most competitive.
Can you just tell us so that maybe the general public understands what an excess workers' comp, so how much is the city in for, and then when does it kick over? Just for the general.
Yes, be happy to answer that. The excess workers' comp is required by statute as part of being a self-insured employer, and your policy provides excess coverage over a $750,000 retention that it basically applies per occurrence. If you have one employee, or it could be a handful of employees injured in one incident, you'd have a $750,000 retention. The exception to that is for law enforcement and fire, which, due to the presumptive benefit laws in Nevada, that retention is higher at $2 million.
Okay. Public comment? Anybody want to weigh in? I don't see any. Motion's in order.
I move to enter into an agreement for excess workers' compensation liability insurance services with New York Marine and General Insurance Company for a total premium of $106,174.
Motion, a couple seconds on the motion discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried. Okay, let's take up item 29, Delta. Thank you, Brian.
They're going to stay because
You're gonna stay
somehow the
there?
interfund loans got in the middle of the
Okay,
insurance.
interfund loan.
I'll have Brian present that one. No.
We do the interfund loan quite a bit every year.
Yeah, so each
go ahead.
year, mostly for the grant fund, because all the grants are on a reimbursement basis and there's no, set funding in the grant fund. So this is for an amount not to exceed $250,000. And we will only book a loan if it's necessary. Right now, the current cash balance is a negative $37,000. We don't have any June receipts in there at this time, so it may turn positive. Last year, we ended up having to do a loan of $150,000, and I think the year before, we didn't end up having to do a loan.
And the
so-
reason is why, so everybody understands what's going on here. Why are we loaning money to the grant
Because
fund?
almost all of the grants are on a reimbursement basis, so, and they're all accounted for in the grants fund. So all the. Did I get the wrong question?
You want to speak out loud, Sherry?
Yeah, well, they changed the rules a couple of years ago, NRS, where all the cash balances across every fund have to be positive. So, I mean, we have a receivable there that's huge. We know we're going to get the money, but it's negative right now. So we need the loan to make sure it's positive at 6/30.
And that's because all the expenses go out for the grants, and then we're waiting for the revenues to come back in.
Okay, we routinely do this. All right, public comment?
Can I ask on the street maintenance, though? I'd like a little more clarification in that one. How come we're Is it just lag time on the sales tax receipts?
Yes,
For-
so,
okay.
and a lot of the money went out up front, during the winter months with the floods and the snow. We still have a journal entry that we're gonna need to do to move some of those expenses out to the insurance fund. That's where we're accounting for all of the FEMA reimbursements. We just haven't done that second reimbursement request to know how much to move out. That may help this a little bit. And then they're definitely not gonna be going over budget. It's just the cash flow and the lag time between the sales taxes and the fuel taxes. So we'll get, because we'll get May and June in July and August.
Okay. Anybody else want to weigh in? Pretty routine. Supervisor Bunkowski, you want to give it a shot?
Resolution number?
R25.
I move to adopt resolution number 2017 R25, a resolution for temporary interfund loans from the general fund to the grant fund for an amount not to exceed $250,000, and from the general fund to the street maintenance fund for an amount not to exceed $300,000.
Motion and a couple seconds on the motion discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Carried. Very good, okay. Some of these things, when we go pretty quick, we do these a lot, so, all right. All right, let's take up 29 Echo. This is Public Entity Property Insurance Program. All right, who's going to kick this off?
All right, so this is to do our insurance renewals for fiscal year 18. We are staying with all of the companies that we're using in this current year for a total premium for fiscal 18 of $804,198. Fiscal 17 was $802,618. So that's a 0.2% increase in the overall insurance program costs over this current fiscal year. The property program premium increased by 19% over the prior year, and that's a result of a 6% increase in property values and also our significant flood damage claims that are outstanding. Brandon, the
So the
city's
premium went up because of our damage claims?
Yes, and additional
I didn't think
property
insurance companies
values.
did that.
No, they never do that.
They don't ever cancel.
They haven't paid anything yet
Do they really do
either.
that?
Yeah, we haven't received any of the proceeds of that
But we got
either.
an increase already.
I
Yeah.
didn't know they did that, but I'm being facetious. That's all right. Go ahead.
So Brandon, hopefully I'm not saying something I shouldn't, but he reached out to several other companies, but none were able to offer a lower quote for the property insurance. But the good news is this increase in property coverage will be offset by a decrease of 15% in the casualty premium. And when we originally received the quotes for fiscal 18, one of the other companies came back much lower, but after negotiations with our current company, Travelers, they were able to offer the lowest rate. So we'll stay with them.
Brandon, Karen.
Brandon, if you could, on the cyber liability, I think there's a mistake in our packet. It says 2 million aggregate and 25 million aggregate limits. I think that should say 2 million aggregate and 50,000 per occurrence. Is that right?
Just to make sure I'm looking at the right document, are you looking at the spreadsheet or the staff report version?
It's in the staff report.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Supervisor. Yes, just to clarify, there's a 2 million aggregate limit that applies specifically to the city, and the program that's placed in, there's actually a 25 million shared aggregate limit with other public entities in that program. So in the future, we can detail that out a little bit more to specify.
I apologize if I missed it, but in our staff notes, we have our broker is still working with PEPIP, and they're hopeful that PEPIP will reduce the quoted premium between $6,000 and $9,000. Did that happen?
No, unfortunately, we kept working with them after the deadline for this staff report, kept working and pushing and just asking questions about it. And unfortunately, they weren't able to reduce the rate for the property insurance, so it stands as quoted.
Okay, all right. Other public comment? Don't see any board. All right. That's where we usually are in this time of year. All right, Supervisor Pankowski.
I move to enter into insurance agreements with Public Entity Property Insurance Program for property insurance, including automobile physical damage, at a total premium of approximately $403,568. Travelers Indemnity Company for an excess liability coverage at a total premium of $375,220. Great American for government crime insurance at a total premium of $12,892. Illinois Union for landfill protection legal liability. Landfill pollution legal liability insurance at a total premium of $12,518 for a grand total of approximately $804,198 for fiscal year 2018.
There's a motion and a second. You know, we can talk about the increases in premiums, but it's pretty nice that the total, the aggregate increase is 2%. I don't know how much.
0.2.
0.2%. 0.2. That's even better than I thought.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. On the motion discussion, hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried. Okay, let's take up the last one. Here, this is to augment the budget in the amount of $10,108,674. This is augmentation for refunding bonds primarily, board added, stuff like that. We do this kind of this time of year. Go ahead and take us through that, please.
All right, so yes, we do this augmentation 2 times a year to make sure that we don't have any budget violations. And I'll start out with the general fund. Let's see, so the amount, so in the transfers column, these are amounts that have been approved by board action or the Internal Finance Committee to be transferred from contingency or between general fund accounts. And any necessary adjustments noted during the last several months while we were preparing the fiscal 18, or the reestimate of fiscal 17 in preparation of the 18 budget. So the amount transferred from contingency to other expense accounts is $1,584,000. So some of the amounts that make up that are almost $550,000 in annual and sick leave payouts for retirees in various departments. In some of the cases, there will be salary savings. But at this point in time, we weren't sure what those savings would be, so we just want to make sure that we augment for those large payouts. Fire department overtime, we increased that budget by $376,000, of which $210,000 of that is being reimbursed by outside entities like BLM, the Division of Forestry, and other governments when we go out and help them with fires in their location. There's $43,000 in fire department vehicle repairs just due to our aging fleet, which we'll be replacing a lot of that next fiscal year. So, the courts, the total for the courts in services and supplies is about $280,000. That $29,000 is due to overtime related to security and after-hours court hearings and case processing. $158,500 is for attorney, interpreter, expert fees, and mental evaluations. And then almost $69,000 for attorney fees related to the murder case that we had going on recently. The sheriff had, where'd the sheriff go? No, he's up here. So the sheriff had $28,000. We increased for autopsies, and also with that, we increased the 18 budget. And then 35,000 in vehicle repairs, and 117,000 in food, kitchen, and domestic supplies, which we also increased through a supplemental for the 18 budget. For Public Works, let's see, at the landfill, we had 100,000 for equipment repairs and maintenance, and this is just breakage due to lack of capital replacement funding in the last couple of years. Alternative sentencing has 32,000 in drug testing. That was also an item that we increased for the fiscal 18 budget, so hopefully we won't have to augment. And then 15,000 was for overtime and group medical insurance. And then in the additional revenue column, there's a total of 873,000 going out to the capital projects fund. 794,000 of that is the increase in landfill revenues from taking over the Douglas County. And then we're moving that over to the capital projects fund because those will be reserved for capital improvements and equipment replacement for the landfill. The rest of that number is 80,000 for training facility repairs that we're going to account for in the capital projects fund, and that's offset by the revenue from the outside entities that are using that facility. And then lastly, in the general fund, you see the transfer out to the insurance fund of 250,000, and that's for the match, the FEMA match for the flood events. We had the total match we're estimating is 500,000, and we had 250,000 that we're using from the insurance fund, and the other 250 from the general fund.
So can you go back up to fire? And there was the line for $30,000 for promotion of a firefighter to captain? What is that? I must have missed that detail. How do we go from a fireman?
Yeah. Is it?
Yeah, that was in the training fund. So when we originally budgeted him, we budgeted him as a firefighter, but he was promoted to captain during the year. So obviously that wasn't included in the budget. He got a promotion.
And stayed in the training line, you're saying?
Yeah, and in prior years, in 16, there was a captain in that fund. It just so happened that that person left, and so this person took over, and he was a firefighter.
So we didn't increase the number of captains, it's just
No.
which fund
Right.
to account for it in the proper place?
Right.
Okay, thanks.
So I'll skip down to the capital projects fund. The big item in that fund is just the offset is the landfill equipment again. So from the 793,000 transfer from the general fund, we're putting 655,000 towards equipment in fiscal 17. And then the remaining balance of 138,000, that'll move over to fiscal 18 for equipment. And then also the 80,000 for the training facility repairs. The library gift fund is just allocating the different donations that they get. The regional transportation fund, that's to account for a reimbursement we received of 125,000, and we're just putting that into undesignated projects until that can be put to a specific project probably next fiscal year. Let's see, the infrastructure tax fund, that's just to account for some donations that we received for downtown art and bike racks. The grant fund is almost 612,000, and that's just to appropriate grant awards that we didn't know about at the beginning of the year. And as they come in throughout the year, we augment the budget for that. Residential construction tax, that's an increase in the taxes we receive through the building permits, and we've just allocated the 105,000 to undesignated until that could be allocated to a specific project. The debt service fund, for the most part, is the 5.9 million that we issued in highway revenue bond, refunding bonds. That money just basically comes in and then goes back out to the escrow company. Ambulance fund, this is the wheelchair program or the MedTrans. I'm not sure what their real name is, but so there's an increase in revenue in that fund, so we've just allocated out to various expense accounts. The building permit fund, we're increasing professional services by $157,000, and that's to cover payments to Charles Abbott. As the revenues come in, we have to pay a percentage out to Charles Abbott, so we want to make sure if there's a lot of revenue coming in June that we have enough to cover the expense. The cemetery fund is just an increase in expense accounts based on additional $25,000 in revenue, and there's an additional $15,000 transfer from the general fund. Fleet, we're mostly just increasing the depreciation expense. In the workers' comp fund, our projections for the internal service charges, it's based on employee, the number of employees. Our projections were a little low. We increased that by $100,000, and so we're just putting that into workers' comp claims to make sure we have enough there. And then the insurance fund, there's the $500,000 match for the flood, and a $20,000 for the senior center building damage. That's just a portion of that. The remainder will be will show up in fiscal 18. And then professional services for the Buddy Miller contract. And that's all I had for the augmentations.
Public comment? Anybody want to weigh in on augmentation? Something we do quite a bit, twice a year. We're not changing the budget. But, okay. Board, anybody? Motion's in order. We can do that.
I move to adopt resolution number 2017 R26, a resolution to augment and amend the Carson City fiscal year 16-17 budget in the amount of $10,108,674.
Motion and a second on the motion. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried. Okay. Is there anything else to come before us before we recess and go to the evening session? All right. One, I want to thank the board for, again, another long agenda today. Everybody, it's a real pleasure working with folks who read everything that's put in front of them and have great questions and great discussion. And tonight I know that, it's a little hard to come back in 2 hours here to go into another joint meeting with the school board. After this, we will try and do these school board meetings, the joint meetings, which we do quarterly, on their own, so that we can do it at night. We don't have to worry about spending an entire day here. Also, I think, talk to the city manager a little bit. It's hard to gauge these agendas because sometimes they get wound up a little bit long. We're trying to, he runs the agenda. I just cry at him. But we're trying to squeeze it down because I know that everybody gets a little runs out of gas towards the end of the day. But again, these things happen, and I just want to say thanks to the board for putting up with us and putting up with carrying a lot of heavy timber today. Just from me to the board, thanks. Okay. Anything else to come before the board before we recess until tonight?
I just want to say something.
Go.
In light of everything that happened yesterday, I just want to say thank you to this board.
You're welcome.
We're a good team.
Kidding.
These are, not particularly easy times in our world. But I think, it's incumbent upon us as leaders to show leadership and to show, how we believe leaders should act and respond, and kind of know that, you know, what we say counts and what we listen to counts. And that's on us as leaders. And I know that each one of the members on this board does exactly that. And, you know, I will repeat what I said yesterday, just I know we're going on here a little bit. At the Flag Day ceremony, I talked a little bit about what the word indivisible means when we say the Pledge of Allegiance. It means not capable of being divided. And I think that it's important for all of us as a nation and as a community and everywhere to know that despite the fact that our political rhetoric may say that we're a nation divided or whatever we want to say, that we realize that when we say the Pledge of Allegiance, we really are saying that we're a nation indivisible, we're one people, or as the city manager would say, e pluribus unum, out of many, one. And that's how we should conduct ourselves, knowing that we all have different views, but that there's a way to communicate those views in a civil way that produces excellence and democracy, and provides, as Brett in the Sheriff's Department said, an air of excellence in this community. So, and so thank you for letting me wax on here a little bit. All right. We'll be in recess until 6 o'clock tonight when we take up with the school board.
Perfect.